But I was interested in resurrecting Wilson a bit because he only is put down. I mean, on the left and the right. The left is afraid to defend him for a variety of reasons. He's vulnerable to charges of racism. He correctly vulnerable. He's not very progressive on that point. And he's vulnerable on the right to charges of wishy-washy internationalism, not very well thought out, although you almost couldn't have a more textbook case of Wilsonian rhetoric than George W. Bush from about 2004 to 2006. Not going in when it was all about hard power and these weapons, but then when they disappeared, it was suddenly all about making the world safe for democracy. Although Bush rejects the Wilsonian label, but nevertheless, I do think it fits him in some ways. In spite of all that, just being a bit of a contrarian, I wanted to say, well, hold it for a second. Wilson is fascinating. He takes the United States into the world picture far more aggressively than Theodore Roosevelt ever does. The two-dimensional story is always that Teddy Roosevelt was blunt and active and understood power, and Wilson was weak and intellectual and hesitated and pontificated. But who sent 2 million men into a very dire conflict in Europe in 1917, and who more or less led the conclave of the world's leaders to define a new and better world in the aftermath of this calamity? Wilson. And Roosevelt had some very interesting successes, but Wilson left a bigger mark on European and global history, I think, than Theodore Roosevelt ever did. So without quite saying we need to return to Wilson, I just say he's complicated. We need to spend a little more time thinking about who he truly was. Then FDR is, for me, after Lincoln, the great hero of the book. I think he got it right in a way that no president before or since has. He was fortunate, and presidents can't control their time in history. They work with the time they're given. But he was confronted by a great global calamity that called out for American help in a way that no calamity previously ever had, and he rose brilliantly to the occasion. I try to make this story a little bit new again by going more deeply than I think is the norm into Roosevelt, the anti-colonialist, and to say that he really did 3 great revolutions in his life, not 2. He defeated poverty, we know that, and he defeated Hitler, we know that. But he also defeated this worldview that was about 200 years old, which was personified by the man who was usually understood to be his best friend, Winston Churchill, which led to very deep divisions between Churchill and Roosevelt. And he articulated his idea of the future of the world very clearly, which actually became the future of the world, this post-colonial world with a United Nations at its center and a series of international institutions that would arbitrate finances and other. I mean, the UN conferences were happening while Roosevelt was alive. These other ones, like food and aviation in the like 1943, 1944, one of which was in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I think the food conference. And I've always wondered if Clinton, I don't think there is a connection, but I used to wonder about that.